Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Reiki Women Podcast, and welcome to the year 2024. Happy New Year to you all. This is our first episode in 2024, and there is a certain energy that comes into the air in January in this time of year, this time when we've collectively decided that it is the start of a new year. And that is the energy of renewal, of restarting, of starting again afresh for the new year. However, we don't always necessarily feel that anything is particularly new. Our life is continuing to move on the way that it has, and we're in the middle of winter. It's a fairly sleepy time of year, and yet there's this cultural energy around renewal and starting fresh. And so we wanted to just circle around that and talk about how the system of Reiki might help us with that, how we might orient towards this idea of renewal, how to honor the season, honor ourselves, and at the same time, honor this opportunity that we have at the start of a new year to think about what might be up for renewal in our life. I am looking forward to this conversation, super seasonally appropriate, and I would love to know, Carrie, what is on the top of your heart about this topic?
Well, I'd also love to say Happy New Year to all of our friends across the globe. And it does feel nice to kind of turn a page and have a fresh season and a fresh new year. And I get that there's some of us in the Southern Hemisphere,
Thank you,
not
Jen.
where Michaela and I live, who are just like basking in the sun right now. And they're like, renewal, what? This is the best time of year and having a great time. So I'm jealous. I'm jealous. One of these days I will have a Southern Hemisphere Christmas and New Year's. But yeah, I don't know. I've been sitting with this question renewal because you know, our life is just kind of continuously unfolding, right? And these different mile markers that happen either throughout the year, and maybe it's the new year, or maybe it's the solstices and equinoxes, or however you mark that transition and change in the season. It's a time to step into the new, but how do we do that well when we feel bogged down with the old? And I always find that it's a little bit of a struggle in January to do that because, the holidays are just so full on. And for lack of a better word, it feels like kind of like this hangover time where we're just like reach this kind of peak and now we're kind of down in the trough a little bit about maybe making some new year resolutions and getting into the trenches about that and realizing, okay, like making this positive change for myself. It's not necessarily easy. We might be really in that process for ourselves right now. Um, and so I also have been very busy with my kids because they've been at home and they're really full on right now. We're in the kindergarten years. And so it's just constant need for attention and entertainment and wanting to do different things. And so for myself, it's just, even though I've had 2 weeks off technically of work, I don't really feel renewed by that process because, I feel like so many demands pulled on me in my day-to-day living, whether it be my kids, dinner, taking care of my pets, the demands of having a small business, a Reiki practice, demands from my clients, and demands of my things that I want to offer out to the world, and that creative process that it takes a long time to do that. So I felt really bogged down, and I've been really looking for myself of a way. How do I find that state of renewal? And as we turn that page, like, how do I give myself a sense that, it is a fresh start, even though I might just be kind of picking up from the last chapter and keep going, right? Um, and so for me, I really do feel that renewal can happen when we are just simply being with this statement. It's so profound, so true, but what is it that I need? And every day kind of checking in to what I really need. And I believe that if we come to Reiki with that intention of being uh, receptive to what we really need, I think that helps us gain a greater awareness of those needs in our day-to-day living and maybe perhaps access of more healthy ways to get our needs met. And so for me, I've really come to recognize that just even taking 10 minutes out of my day to calm my mind and to invite my energy to rebalance itself has been really useful. It's just given me enough centering so that I can then go about, my day-to-day living, the frenetic day-to-day living that my life is right now, and I can just do it in a more centered and calm way. I've also been turning to some ideas within yoga. So in yoga, they have this idea of um, a bhavana. So a bhavana is a vibe or a way of cultivating energy. And I really think yoga has so much to say in the world of energy cultivation, and the ideas around prana and Reiki, they're very analogous to each other. But with this whole notion of energy cultivation, there are three particular energies, and there might be many more, but that these three particular energies are very restorative. So those are strength, love, and peace. And so really sitting with those three and really deciding for myself what I need in any moment. So within a yoga practice, getting some exercise can be very restorative too, regenerative, getting out there, moving your body, testing your strength. That can be one way that really gets us out of our head, into our body, centers us, grounds us. And I know that for me, that's certainly the case. But on those more emotional levels of our being, it's interesting to play with how we're holding, the heaviness of our responsibilities and burdens in life. And so when we can give ourselves the appropriate amount of time to really explore that, I've noticed for myself that there's a lot of healing that's happening for me when I really look at those things that are really heavy. So whether it be, a huge pile of dishes in the sink and I'm like rolling my eyes because I just cleaned those dishes like 4 hours ago and now they're piled up again. But, looking at those things with a different lens. So if I can look through it with a lens of resentment and frustration, there's one thing. If I look through it through a lens of service and care for my family, that's another. And I can hold the weight of those responsibilities a little bit differently. Another way of doing it is asking for what I need. And so if that means somebody else doing the dishes for me every once in a while, I think that that's good. Or, well, actually, any given time that they want to. So anyways, that's a lot of me talking. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on renewal and how Reiki can.
Yeah. Well, hi, Happy New Year. I actually really love this time of the year. I do not have a young family. For me, it always is like when I get towards the end of the year, I know it's all psychological, but you get towards the end of the year and I do start to feel heavy and I start to feel like I've got the whole year on my back sort of feeling. And I really look forward to the time that I can go, you know what, I'm just not going to do the same things that I always do throughout the year, just for 1 or 2 weeks. I'm just going to let that go. And I'm going to give myself a break. And I love that. And I do it every year. I still do things, but it's more a psychological thing. It's more that sort of sense of giving over and allowing other things to come up. And for me, it's often a really creative time because I give myself that peace, that quiet, to just not have to think about all the regular normal things that I'm working on every day, every week. And something in my head says it's okay. And I sit back, and before I know it, I'm actually doing more things rather than actually doing nothing. But they're things that I'm allowing joy to come up, and things that I'm really doing joyfully that I probably wouldn't give myself the time to do during the year. So, it's a very creative time for me. I really enjoy it. Joyful time. So bringing that sense into the new year. And I always hope for myself that I can remember those feelings of that peace and just openness to allow that creativity through. So, and even if I don't, I know that it's like I've refueled myself and, given myself the opportunity to bring something new into the year that will actually support me through the year. And if we're talking about the system of Reiki with this, I think just looking at the words of what the meaning is behind the foundation meditation practice of Joshin Kokyu Ho. So Joshin Kokyu Ho, Joshin, well, let's leave Joshin for a moment. Kokyu is breath and Ho is method. So it's a breathing method, but what is it doing? And that's the word Joshin. So Jo is pure. So it's about a purity, and Shin is the same meaning as kokoro, which is a theme in Japanese culture, which is about bringing the heart and the mind into whatever you do. So this purification of this heart and mind. In our culture, I think we tend to maybe bring the heart and the mind into separate places, but something like kokoro brings these two in together. So you've got the psychological and the physical in this one word, and we're working at purifying these elements with this simple meditation. And it's a meditation using the breath. So it is the perfect practice for renewal. And it's not anything about the middle of the year, beginning of the year, end of the year, nothing. It is something that we can do every day, and we can bring that in, we can purify ourselves. So just really releasing exactly what I was talking about before, this idea of releasing whatever it is we're holding on to, let that go and allow that joy and creativity back into your life. So a very simple meditation practice can do that for you. Just on a separate note, I just see something pretty off to my side here, which I did bring in with the idea that I could bring it into the podcast somehow, and I will work it in somehow. So I'm doing that now. I went out into the garden, and it is summer here. Yes, it has been raining a lot, but we had a very dry spring. Now, the thing is about life is that every moment is different. Every season is different. Every part of a season is different. So even though the flowers bloom, they're always going to be different every year. And this is this joyful renewal thing as well, because nothing is the same. And, we can think that we're doing the same old blah, blah, blah all the time, but we are not, because it's always different. Everything's new. And this is one of my beautiful hydrangeas that I've got. And I've got them in purple and all sorts of colors, white and cream and blue. But there's also some unusual hydrangeas that I've got, and I thought I'd show you these as well.
Wow.
They're beautiful, yes. So they're all different, unique, and every year they're different. Like this year, they're all down my driveway. Everyone who's come in this year has just gone, oh my God, those hydrangeas. That doesn't happen every year. So, they're just particularly beautiful this year. And that's a great joy, something to be joyful for. So just recognizing the small things in our life, each of those little things, and really taking pleasure in that, especially natural things, and having the opportunity, if you can, to get out into nature, allow its natural flow and just how it's always moving, shifting, being, and really sitting back into that and allowing that to affect you and affect how you think about your life and your world. And being a part of nature, just allowing that to be in your life and letting that be a renewing force. And that can be an ongoing thing, as I said, not necessarily anything to do with any time of the year. Yeah, I think that's sort of everything I was thinking of.
Yeah, I've been loving the photos you've posted of those hydrangeas. It looks just delightful on your property right now. I have a desire and like a little spark of intention to come visit you there in Australia sometime, and a little bit more, actually a lot more realistic intention to visit you in Trinidad and get a little sense of these very different landscapes that we all live inside of. So this idea of renewal as a continuum is really powerful, right? The idea that, truly everything is in some form of renewal and change most of the time. And so, we can drop into renewal inside of ourselves, around us, in the world, really at any time. And then there's these kind of larger cycles of the seasons, larger cycles of the world that, of course, look very particular, different places in the world, different times, different, in the same place, but in different years. These kind of overall patterns that we can align ourselves with around a concept like renewal. And one of the things that I've been talking a lot lately about, because it always just strikes me so poignantly, is how disconnected our culture tends to be from those natural patterns and cycles. And how, like, this time of year, that contrast is very stark. So, here where Carrie and I are, it is going into midwinter. Where you are, Bronwen, it's going into midsummer. Seasonally speaking, neither one of these are seasons that are particularly associated with renewal, right? Spring typically is the season where the world is in its like biggest show of renewal. Keeping in mind, there's always some form of dying and becoming born, renewing and coming to the end at all times. But we have this really odd juxtaposition between midwinter, midsummer, and then this January 1st, this arbitrary date that says this is the beginning of the new year. And that does generate this cultural wave of hit the ground running, go big, go home, set your intentions, set your vision, get your resolutions set and like hit the ground running on January 1st, get her done. And I love that, Carrie, I think it was Carrie, you said that there's this kind of sense of a collective hangover that's kind of happening at this time, the fatigue from a holiday, a season of holidays, and, the excitement of that dies down. And then often, like in my case, people get sick because the energy has been really big. And then as soon as it kind of dies down, the body's like, okay, I can be sick now. So it's like this particular time of year, beginning of January, is in many ways absolutely not a time of like big renewal and like starting over in terms of how we generally feel. So there's this misalignment there. And, what happens is a lot of difficulty, a lot of failure around resolutions, a lot of, feeling like people have expressed feelings of shame of like, God, all I want to do is rest, but like, get her done, new year. And so I want to just, acknowledge that and say that one of the best things I think we can do in terms of honoring a presence like renewal, an important aspect of our life, is to recognize how it feels to be in this moment of the season where you are in a given moment. And to say that it's not that January has nothing to do with renewal, right? So on our side of the world in wintertime, this is the time for rest, for rejuvenation, for introspection, yes, for visioning, yes, for dreaming. This is dream time. Out in the garden, this is the time when the seeds have long fallen into the ground. They've sunken down into the earth. They've gotten rained in. They're still, they're quiet. Their hard shells have begun to soften and expand. They're making more space inside of themselves for the vibrating potential of life that's inside of that seed, but hasn't, yet necessarily been ready to come out, or is coming out slowly. And so there is this energy that's incredibly important for renewal, but there's also an energy of decay that's still there, right? In the winter, this is the time for composting, the time when things go back to the earth, the time when soil gets built, when things break down to make room for the renewal, to bring resources to the renewal, to clear away, that which is ready to go so that the renewal can be as fresh as it can be. And so when we think about, being with the energy of renewal, but then this feeling that, but it's not new yet, or like, it's just kind of the same old, we can be with that and we can tend to that. We can say, I loved that question. that you posed, Carrie, what exactly is it that I need in this moment? Just for this moment, what do I need and how can I respond to that? That question and answer, that question and response is a tiny little form of renewal. What do I need in this moment? Identify the need, take a gesture, a motion towards that need is a moment of renewal. And so I think these are ways that we can soften this kind of arbitrary, we tend to kind of think about things in these big moments. It's the new year. This is the big moment for renewal, as opposed to every moment there's renewal. Every moment there's decay. There's this cycle that's happening all the time. And how can I really be with the energy of what it is that's actually happening in my life and in the world in a way that serves whatever renewal is wanting to happen. And the system of Reiki is a system that brings us back into alignment with nature. It is from nature-based spiritual practices, and it very much draws a natural metaphor, and it draws on focusing our attention on our connection with the world. In the Joshin Kokyu practice that you talked about, Bronwen, we're drawing our attention inward, and then we're expanding our attention outward to our connection with the world. And that is a really, really powerful, simple, accessible, love it so much, simple, accessible, powerful, effective practice for helping us to recognize where we are in a given cycle, our own personal cycle of life and the cycles of the world, and to be in that call and response with ourselves and with the world. How do I feel? What do I need? What response is appropriate in this moment and is available in this moment? So the system of Reiki absolutely aligns us with that, like kind of fine tunes our compass to be well aligned with the movements of the world. And it also can, help us with those feelings of tension, those feelings of angst, of pressure, that might be present. I mean, for a lot of reasons in any given moment. But, around this idea, this pressure of needing to start fresh if we perhaps are not actually feeling that we are starting fresh. And to kind of connect back in with our freshness. I think about that spark of light that is imagined in our belly, that spark of life that is where we drop our attention when we're in Joshin Kokyu. There's this freshness to it, right? This clarity to it. It's a source of kind of, pure potential that we all have, that when we're needing to feel a sense of renewal, it's right there. We can bring our attention to it anytime. And it's constantly in that state of releasing what is no longer needed and renewing. And so again, these simple practices help us to just calibrate and to settle into the cycles of the world, which takes a tremendous amount of pressure off of us, mental and emotional pressure in terms of, aligning all of these things, physical pressure in terms of listening to our body and letting it be the animal body that it is in the world, and spiritual pressure because we're in agreement with the world as opposed to being in tension with the world. I feel like so much difficulty that we experience in modern times comes from just resisting what is actually true in the world, in the natural world, as opposed to aligning with it. So Reiki helps us to do all of that. It helps us to navigate discomfort and tension, and it gives us an access point, pathway back home that we can always follow in any moment to find that spark of renewal that is always with us at all times.
I love that. I feel like there's a couple of threads there that I'd love to keep weaving together. And first of all, is being connected to the cycles of nature. And so I've seen it being floating around lately, and I never thought of it this way. But if you take the 13 moon cycles of the year, and that's 28 days, if you times that by 13, if we had 13 months of the year, every month would be aligned fully with the moon cycles. And so there's this arbitrariness of time, right? And I think at least within spiritual communities that I'm a part of, and the area where I live, there's a lot more dialogue about kind of shifting our, mindset around these transitions of the year to be more aligned with nature. And how do we live from that place? And as you said, Michaela, like, you know, trying to start, sorry, trying to start a new diet routine in January is probably the worst time to do it.
Yeah.
Like any sort of change, it's not the greatest time to do it, in our biological system. And so to really respect that. And I think also another layer I'd love to, add to that is just us as Reiki practitioners. And I feel like there is a pressure perhaps within owning a small business is to, hit the ground running 2024, have all these things available to people. You know, uh, maybe it is a time where we're feeling particularly financial pressures as well after the holidays. And how do we kind of get the gears of our business going? And even when we're not really feeling it, right? Like, feeling like I want to be still in my dream time space, in my visioning process, and yet these like external pressures. So, the beautiful thing about Reiki practice is you can build it around what your body needs. You can build it around what you truly need, both financially and in those cycles of your life, and even in the day to day, like what type of time of day you have to work and all of that stuff. So there's some generous flexibility there, and so I really do encourage every Reiki practitioner who's listening to this to just listen to those cycles of nature and follow those natural rhythms in your body and in your business as well. And that I think is something that I've been really learning to do. That there's a sustainability, pattern. And so if I, put out a big program out there, there's kind of just like their own hangover that happens, like putting all of this energy into something, and then there's kind of a time for renewal after that. Um, so, not forcing the process, just allowing it to feel really good in your body is something that I'm really leaning more and more into. Um, and kind of just discovering ways in which it feels more sustainable for me. And navigating that, of course, with my kids and stuff too.
Yeah.
Um, so the other element that I'd love to weave into this is that I feel like our diet can really help us kind of unpack. So for me, over the holidays, maybe we were around some triggering family members, or there's just stuff happening, or we didn't have time to do the emotional processing, and so sometimes it's just easy to like grab a glass of wine, or eat another dessert, or whatever it is, that kind of is an emotional soother. And so as I've shifted into some new habits in January, I've really noticed like a needing to emotionally process a little bit better. So not turning to that glass of wine, it's instead really sitting with, that impetus for it. Am I seeking that to disconnect, or is I'm seeking it for any other reason? And same with food. What is my relationship with the food that I'm eating? And so to me, that extra mindfulness piece, and then sitting with those emotions in the context of like a Reiki meditation, or like you've been talking about a Josh and Kokyo practice, is really, really profound and helpful. And just even that sense of just giving yourself more spaciousness. And I've had this visualization lately coming to me of just, the whole process of growth really starts from the inside out. And it's the spaciousness of a seed growing and expanding underground. And from that spaciousness, there's this like inner to outer transformation that's happening. And so for me, it's giving myself more spaciousness in those places where I feel like that transformation is happening. Or just like peeling back the layers and giving more space to those inner layers, so that wisdom, that energy, that insight can really come more forward in my life. So anyways, those are some.
There's a lot there. I was just thinking about the habits thing, thinking to yourself, what part of me needs that? So, the things that it links into this idea of, processing emotions, and what part of me is needing to have the wine or the cake or the whatever it is that we're continually moving towards in that time and creating those habits from. Um, I think that a lot of the things that we've been alluding to in this podcast today come back to, I never said the words, and I guess I just take it for granted, but it is something that it's always worth saying is, the Reiki precepts, and, looking at the for today only, and knowing that, all of us have spoken to this idea of continual renewing, and it's a never-ending process. Everything is unique and different in every moment, and it's that openness, being open to that and allowing that to happen. So for today only, for in each moment, allowing whatever it is to happen. And as you've both said, allowing a way to move into that space, or one of the ways of moving into that space, is acknowledging nature and its natural rhythms, and really sitting back into that space of being a part of nature. There was I was just thinking about, I wrote a little blog recently, which was called Throwing Joy at the World, because sometimes we feel really pressured. This is what you've all been talking about as well, right? So we're pressured to be things, and especially in January, you got to be this, you got to do, I've got to be so joyful. But a lot of that is a lot of external stuff. It is not, Carrie, coming from that quiet place of allowing joy to come out, and it's insincere, and it's fake. So don't feel like you have to be that. Sometimes I hear people say things like, oh, when I walk down the street, I look in everybody's eyes, and I do this, and I do that. But I find that a little forcing, right? It's like, let people be themselves, let people be themselves naturally. And not everybody is an extrovert, for example. Just allow yourself to be who you are, and don't feel like you have to throw yourself out into the world. Just being yourself is enough. And feeling that and knowing that is being in that space of natural rhythm and joy, and without having to externally emote that. And I think January can sometimes make us feel like we've got to do that, and it's not necessary. We can sit back into it and love being who we are and where we are, and be a pretty flower.
I think that's such an important piece to highlight, Bronwen, this idea that we all need to acknowledge and honor where we are personally and where others are. And when we have a big kind of cultural narrative around how we're supposed to feel or what we're supposed to be up to because of the calendar date or, or some other external thing, there can be a lot of guilt and a lot of shame and a lot of like need to kind of hide where we're at if we're not in alignment with that. And so if there's this great pressure around, starting fresh and the new year, and, look, the idea of like, oh, well, that last year was so hard, but this is my year and this is going to be the year that's great. And like, we have this total fresh start. But if somebody is feeling like, actually, my life is kind of like shit right now, or I'm really grieving right now, or I'm ill, or I'm exhausted, or I am just kind of whatever, kind of neutral right now. It can be really hard to be yourself when there's that contrast. And so I think just this reminder that, I think, as you say, bringing it back to the precepts, that reminds us that just for today, we need to meet what is happening right in this moment, and to be in compassion with ourselves and with others, however we're showing up in that given moment. And this idea of giving people grace and letting them be themselves is so essential. And giving ourselves grace, letting ourselves be who and where we are, while at the same time allowing the precepts to help guide, how we think about the decisions that we make. To your point, Carrie, is it in alignment with, compassion to myself, to self-soothe in ways that I know will, ultimately harm me, or will at least kind of, bring me to a place that isn't as vibrant and as healthy as I would like to be. Using the precepts as a compass, moment to moment, right? Noticing that those moments change, that feelings are a wave that comes and passes, and that we can, be with exactly what we are, letting other people be with what they are, regardless of what we're supposed to be feeling or doing in a given moment of the year. I think that's a really, it's like almost a countercultural thing that we can be in the practice of, especially in these moments when there's this kind of cultural pressure to be or do a certain thing. Because in that way, we can let our renewals come naturally in their time. We can feel a lot of frustration if we're supposed to feel, fresh and new and like it's a fresh start, and we don't. But maybe we feel that way some other time, and we want to celebrate that. We want to be in that moment. So yeah, I think we're complex enough, we're big enough. With the practice of Reiki, we can feel spacious enough to be able to hold all of those things as true, to consciously set about conditions in our life to invite the renewal, to invite the visioning, the imagining, the composting of the things that we need to let go. And at the same time, recognizing when maybe even doing those things is pushing up against a wall, and we need to just be wherever we are in that moment. It's discernment, moment by moment discernment. And the fourth precept that reminds us to be diligent in that is a really valuable one. Being true to our way and our being, and being diligent, which are two of the ways that we work with that fourth precept, really help us to remember to notice and to be in call and response with our life and with the world moment to moment. And, as best as we can to avoid kind of falling into the rut of whatever it is we're supposed to be doing, and be more mindful of what is actually happening, what is actually happening with ourselves and with others, and with the vibe in the air. We can do ourselves a great service, and do our communities and others a great service by practicing that form of diligence, and of course allowing the system of Reiki to support us in doing that. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this juicy and timely topic for this day, my dear friends?
Well, for me, this last thread, and especially connected to the precepts, I've really been feeling this pressure or not pressure, but this desire to really rest inside of gratitude as well. And, as intense as the end of the year was for me this year, and just as intensity that maybe naturally arose through the process, is that there were so many blessings that happened too. And as we've been talking about, like nature and plants, and I'm realizing I have like more plants around me because my husband bought like tons of plants for Christmas, and like I literally have like plants surrounding four corners of me right now. And just being more mindful of really taking in, like digesting the gifts that were received over the holidays, sitting with the joy of connection and being with our families, and just taking the most out of that, and not neglecting that part, because those things are very renewing as well. And I think in the spirit too, I'm sure all of us are up to some new things this year. So I thought I'd just share that I'm starting a monthly healing circle. And so all are invited to come, and I'll share the link to that. But the third Sunday of every month, we're gathering for just an hour to connect. And our first topic is actually renewal. So if you'd like to receive a Reiki practice around this concept and idea, I'd love to share it with you. And maybe you guys have some other things up in your Reiki kitchen that you'd like to share with us.
Anything you cooking up over there, Bronwen?
Oh, I'm always cooking something. I made a delicious, what did I make recently? No, just kidding. I did make a nice cake, which was very bad because I ate a lot of it. So I won't be doing that again for a while. No, what am I cooking up? I don't know. I've been doing some fun things I decided to try to get myself onto Instagram because everyone's telling me that I should. So I've got some ideas for that. So I've just been sort of creating some things. But yeah, I have the regular practice groups that I have. So every second week I have a practice group, which is a coaching group for an hour and online, and my Reiju every Friday in Australia, Thursday, rest of the world, and my healing group at the end of the month. So those are still continuing, and I'm getting so much joy out of that. So I wish you the best, Carrie, with your group. I'm sure it'll be beautiful. Great idea to focus on a specific idea and work with that. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to let the rest of the creative things sort of just evolve as the year moves through. So, and Michaela, what are you up to?
Yeah, I actually did kind of ride the cultural wave of like reflecting on the new year in my business sense, because there is a certain wisdom to stepping inside of structures that are set up for businesses to work. So I just actually completed doing a video that I'll be putting out on Wednesday, discussing my 2024. But I would say the biggest thing is that I did renew my in-depth Reiki program, which originally was beta tested as a year program. I spent the last 2 years testing it with several cohorts, refining it, taking feedback and reflection, and really tightening it up and creating something that I'm really, really proud of. And that is a really effective container. So it is now a 9-month program, and it will be launching in March. And that will walk a person through the full process of the system of Reiki from level 1 through level 3, and many stops in between, with lots of individual and community support. And I'm really excited about that. I'm also formally launching my Reiki teacher training apprenticeship program. I had a teaching apprentice this past year. It's been delightful. Together, we created curriculum for teaching teachers, which is something that is particularly on my heart, and all kinds of other things that are germinating, that are in that dreaming place, that will be coming forward. And I'll share a link to that video if anyone wants to geek out with me on what is in store for Heartscapes in the coming year. Yeah, so we would also love to know what all of you have coming up in the year. Are you feeling a sense of renewal this time of year, or are you feeling like you'd really rather climb back in bed for another couple of months? Are you up to any kind of exciting visioning? Just what's your relationship to this time of year? We would love to know. You can drop that down in the comments below. We love having conversations there. And you can join us on our Facebook group, which is Embodying Reiki with RWP, on Facebook, and we continue the conversation there. So thank you all so much for joining us on this first episode of 2024 as we renew the Reiki Women Podcast for another year. It feels really good to do that. Thank you both for continuing this conversation. It's really a highlight of, I think, all of our week. And I look forward to being with you all again next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.